All right, let's talk now about how to solve what we call literal equations. So solving literal equations, or when you see the in terms of type of language, then what you're probably going to look at is an equation that has multiple variables. So as you can see, all these examples down here have multiple variables. You have the area equals 1/2 base times height. Here's like the Fahrenheit to Celsius formula. We have a Fahrenheit and our Celsius in there, and then volume, radius, height. Like you have a whole bunch of different variables here, right? So another important thing to note here is that our answer will end up being an equation. So for this particular case, if I said like solve for A, obviously, then we still have an equation as our answer. For this one, if I said solve for Fahrenheit, which it would be, obviously you can see we still have an equation there, right? So let's take a look at some examples. So it says solve the following equation for y. So you can see there's a y and an x, both in our original equation there. So if we're solving for y, we still want to use our inverse operations to get rid of this 6x. When you're getting rid of that 6x, we want to take the 6 and the x together. So when you're adding, because the inverse operation for subtraction would be adding, right? So you add 6x to both sides. Gets rid of it over here. You're left with 3y equals. Now over here, can you combine the 12 and the 6x? Hopefully your answer was no, because they're not like terms, right? This 12 and the 6x, you write out separately. So this is going to look, I'm going to write the 6x first, but it doesn't actually matter, and I guess I'll show you both ways. So if you did it the other way and put the 12 first and the 6x second, you're still going to end up solving it in the same way. I'll just show you maybe why I write my x first over here. So to solve, we're going to divide both sides by 3, but when you divide this side, you have to do all of it by 3, not just the 6, not just the 12. So same thing over here. You divide by 3. The whole thing has to be divided by 3. Now, you may see it like this, where they separate it out like that, and just know it's the exact same thing. Okay? So if I continue, we get rid of our 3's. We're left with y equals, and this way may make more sense because then you can just do the individual division over here. So 12 divided by 3 would give us 4, and then you would do 6 divided by 3, which would give us 2x. Over here, same thing, but I like to, when I teach it, I say you kind of create a heart. So we get rid of our 3's over here. You're left with y equals 6 divided by 3 gives me that 2x still, and then 12 divided by 3 would give me that 4. So can you see how it kind of creates a heart here, right? Just make sure you're doing the division as you're going. So the reason I wrote it out like this was because it puts it in that form y equals mx plus b. Hope you're familiar with that. It's a linear equation. This form still works as well. It's not a big deal on what order it's in, as long as our like plus and minus signs are attached to the correct number. Let's look at our next example. It says whenever the equation 2x plus 3 equals 3y is true, that means x equals question mark. So we have a y, we have an x. In this case, what it's asking us is to solve for the x. So let's do that. Well, the y is already on this side, so I'm going to move this 3 over this side with the y and try and work on getting that x by itself. So we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. Again, inverse operations there. Gets rid of it here. We're left with 2x on this side equals, again, the order doesn't matter, but looking at my answers over here, it looks like this y value comes first. So I'm going to do 3y first, and then the minus the 3. Then we're going to divide by 2. Again, you divide the whole thing by 2, but if you prefer to write it and just do each individual part and divide it by 2, that's great as well. We get rid of it here, so we're left with x equals, we have 3y divided by 2. That doesn't simplify. You could write it as 1.5, actually, but as you can see in all my answer options over here, they don't have any decimals. So we're going to keep it in fraction form. And then we would have minus, and again, we have 3 over 2. So which one does that match? Hopefully you realize it would match with B. So again, in both cases, we're left with, when we're solving in terms of, or solving a literal equation, our answer is still an equation itself, right? We don't end up with just one number for our answer. Which brings us to then our post-it note number 2. So in solving in terms of, or again, you can write it as a literal equation, Literal equation, we want our answer. Our answer will be an equation with multiple variables. And then I kind of have this example down here. The only one step is you're subtracting the 2 over. But again, we end up getting an equation for our answer.